Hello, I'm Michael Parker, and welcome to Antidote. This week, it's all about cybersecurity, national security, corporate security, and your own personal security of your personal data. Joining us in the studio today is Tyler Cohen Wood. She is a cybersecurity expert and advisor for Inspired eLearning. She's also a former Deputy Division Chief of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and she spent 13 years with the Department of Defense. Tyler, welcome to Antidote.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. Tell me this, as my fellow Texan, how does a nice Texas girl like you wind up in this?
Well, it was one of those weird things. It was just inevitable that it was going to happen. I think I was kind of a closet nerd growing up. I used to catalog my Star Trek tapes by star date.
Of course.
I mean, come on, who doesn't do that, right?
Sure.
So it was just inevitable that I was going to fall into this type of field. And it's something that I just absolutely love.
Well, given that you've spent so much time within the government system and protocol, the first thing I have to ask you about, and some people don't think this is a big story, I personally think it's a huge story, and it is the Hillary Clinton private email server. This past week, this Romanian hacker, this guy named Guccifer, said that he breached her server twice in 2013. And while he was there, he saw at least 10 other IP addresses of possible hacks from other foreign countries. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this thing because it's a bit of a cautionary tale, and we'll move on. Let's talk about Hillary's email server. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, I've been in the intelligence community and with the Department of Defense for quite some time, and I have not heard of anyone having their own personal servers for email, because there are specific systems that you use for different classifications of emails. And when you're sending emails, emails have to be marked with the classification of what they are. So it's a little bit bizarre. Maybe it was something that she did for convenience, but I really don't know what her reasoning was.
She claimed that it was for convenience. She said she didn't want to carry two smartphones, but I mean, she also has said, hey, listen, I'm a digital hoarder. I've got an iPad, I've got an iPhone, I've got a mini iPad. So she was already carrying all this gear. But supposedly the State Department would not allow its sanctioned BlackBerry to have two different email addresses on it. So she then had this other email server placed in her offices. And the guy, the IT guy, his name is Brian Pagliano. I mean, he now has immunity from the Department of Justice. So to me, for a person that's running for president, for a person who's spent their entire life within government, it seems incomprehensible that this would just be, oops, sorry, my bad.
I'm surprised by it. Like I said, I'm sure people have done it, but I have not personally heard of anyone at her level or even within the intelligence community receiving emails who had their own personal server, because it's just too risky.
I would think so. And I mean, the whole way it was handled is, I don't like it, because supposedly 30,000 plus emails were handed over. 31,000 emails were deleted because they were said to be private. And then the server was wiped clean. That just seems like completely not transparent.
Well, I'm not taking any side one way or the other, but just in a hypothetical situation, anytime, because when you delete an email, that email is not gone. It resides in multiple places, including on the computer in unallocated space, which a lot of your users will probably understand. But the fact that emails were wiped, which means you're overwriting multiple times to NSA standards so that those emails are almost impossible to bring back is interesting. It's very interesting.
Well, and I also have to qualify this because this hacker is claiming this. As far as I know, we do not have definitive proof that he did this, but he's claiming that the way that he did this was through Sidney Blumenthal's AOL account. Who has an AOL account these days? Did it through that, and I guess he got IP addresses or something, but that's how he found his way into the server. He only breached it twice. He's kind of acting very nonchalant about the whole thing. But, I mean, this story speaks to what you're all about.
Absolutely. Well, what he did was he did something that hackers are moving toward, and that's instead of trying to break into systems, the traditional means like SQL injections or finding flaws in the system, oftentimes they're now trying to attack the human. And he was able to, by social media research and internet research, find out the answers to the questions that would give him access to Blumenthal's account. And once he was in that account, he was able to see the emails. He saw that he was getting emails from Hillary Clinton. He saw the IP address, which is kind of like the, think of your home address. It's your computer's address.
Sure.
And he was then able to scan that computer and look for vulnerabilities, he claims, and that's how he was able to then get in. But what's important here is that he was able to do just simple internet research and answer all of the security questions to get access to this guy's account without even having to really hack anything.
Yeah, from all appearances, he's just some guy from the Romanian, sticks. His name is Marcel Lehel Lazar. And yeah, I mean, this was an old school thing. I mean, we don't know what level of skills he has, but this doesn't seem to be a complex thing that he did.
It isn't. It's not complex at all. It's just taking time and looking through public records, just doing basic internet research. And that is why for people, companies, anybody, you have to educate yourself on the digital breadcrumbs you are leaving behind on the internet for people with ill intentions to find, because they can then use that against you.
They accumulate that data of your pets' names or what have you, and birth dates and things like that. Well, here's the other thing. From what I'm understanding and what they're claiming, Hillary's team, that this was not illegal at the time for her to have this server, yet it's illegal now. And the other thing is by having a private server, it protects her from Freedom of Information Act requests. It would protect her from congressional subpoenas.
Yeah. All right, I will tell you this. I don't know the answer to that question. Granted, I probably have seen every single episode of Law and Order in existence.
Yeah.
But I'm not an attorney, so I don't know the specifics and the legalities in that. But again, I will go back to, I have never heard of anyone who's receiving top secret information having a home system.
Right.
I just haven't.
Well, they were also saying that, no, nothing was classified. Then they said some of it was classified. And now it comes out that at least 22 documents that were on that server were top secret.
Well, you have a few issues here. You have issues where if something was top secret or secret and it was not labeled top secret or secret, that's a problem. But also, you have the other issue where oftentimes you could have multiple pieces of unclassified data, but when you piece them together, they become classified.
I think that's also part of their defense, because they're saying that, hey, listen, we could not anticipate which documents were going to eventually be considered classified. All of which, to me, just sounds very naive and unlikely. And I know you probably can't say this, but I mean, to me, it seems like this was intentionally to operate without oversight.
I don't know what the intentions were. I mean, the intentions could have been that, but it could have also just simply been convenience, because this is a person who's probably working, 24/7 and doesn't want to have to go into a specific location where they have the proper servers, or perhaps they could have put in a skiff in where she lived and actually had the proper servers. So I don't really know what happened there, but I do know that it's relatively easy to recognize what is classified, even if it's not marked. And someone at a high level would probably know that.
I agree. So probably my last question on this subject is, do you think this is a prosecutable offense?
That's going to have to depend on the laws. That's going to depend on the legalities of when this was done. And again, as much as I'd love to be a lawyer and, my experience with Law and Order, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to turn out. I'm just glad that I'm not the one having to prosecute it.
Sure. And I can't remember if I've said this already. I'm not pointing all this out because I'm a disgruntled Bernie supporter. I'm not supporting Bernie, but it's a big deal, and something of this nature that has national security interests embedded within it. It's just something I don't think should have happened.
No. But there's also there are so many possibilities, and we may never know what the intention was. It could have just been something as simple as, this is a person who is working 24/7, has to constantly have access, and maybe that was the solution that came up. I don't know, and I don't know if we ever will know. But I do know that it probably will never happen again.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yes.
As of now, the wiped server is in the hands of the FBI, and I guess they can still try to retrieve some information, and we'll see what happens.
Yes, they can. Even if something is wiped, it is difficult, it is expensive, but it is potentially possible to recreate the information. But understand also, when you're emailing somebody, email goes through various points that may or may not be collecting the data. The ISP may have the data. The other person she was sending emails to may have the data too. So there are various ways in which they can try to retrieve that if they're unable to do it based on the server that she has.
Makes sense. Another thing I want to move on to, at the end of 2015, there was this really interesting story, and this is more on the corporate side. It was a fascinating story to me. I was skeptical of it, but it was the Sony hack in December of 2015. And I say that I was skeptical because almost immediately it was claimed that this massive hack and this group was called the Guardians of Peace, whoever that is, that they were North Korean, and this was in retaliation of a Seth Rogen film. Listen, I think the Seth Rogen film was a horrible idea from the get-go, but I was skeptical that North Korea was behind this. So I always thought it was more likely that it was an inside job, that it was a disgruntled employee. John McAfee, who's been on my show a couple of times, has said back in January that he knows who did it, and they are civil libertarian hacktivists, and they did it because they oppose restrictions on art by the music industry and the movie industry. What was your takeaway on this case?
Well, unfortunately, I still am under obligations to not disclose any type of classified information that I may or may not have access. I may or may not still know.
Okay.
But what I can say is this was a very unique hack. Most hacks happen because the hackers they want money, they want intellectual property, they're after something, and they're trying to remain hidden. This was revenge. This was different. They wanted everyone in the world to know that they had been there, and the intention was to humiliate. So it was very different than what you normally will see.
And I mean, the way the story goes is that, I mean, they got troves of material. I don't even remember how many gigabytes of material of sensitive data, but as a result of that, it was essentially laid at the head of North Korea, and I'm guessing that we probably imposed embargoes or sanctions on them as a result of it, whether they did it or not.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, was the movie really that good that
I never watched it.
I didn't either?
I remember when I first heard that they were going to do a movie about assassinating, Kim Jong-il or Un or whatever it was, I was like, well, that sounds like an absolutely crappy idea. But we'll see. Well, let's move to personal security because...
Well, you know what they should do? They should make all movies Star Trek movies.
My guess, Rod Roddenberry would probably agree with that.
There you go.
And I like me some Star Trek. Yes. Well, let's move to personal security because that's really what you focus on primarily now. You have a book called Catching the Catfishers.
Yes, I do.
And my daughters are fascinated by that MTV show. I really don't like them watching it, but they love it. So how accurate is that depiction of catfishing versus what you talk about in this book?
Well, it's slightly different because this book takes on everything internet in a very easy, ingestible manner. So a parent can pick this book up and understand with checklists, and they can discuss it with their young kids, how to protect themselves in the online domain. And it also talks about how to present yourself in the online domain. But one thing that it does that I have yet to see another book do is it teaches you how to vet if who you're talking to online is who they say they are, and how to actually read deception in the online domain. Because I don't remember the exact statistic, I think it's like 90-something% of communication is body language. But in this domain, you don't have that. So I have a checklist in the book that discusses how you can vet and how you can read lies, and you can determine if this person is real or fake. And there were actually stories that caused me to write the book, and then stories that have come after for people telling me, well, we use this, and oh my, wow, that kind of saved our tails.
Give me a couple of points that you would advise people to do when they're trying to determine the veracity of someone's identity that they're communicating with.
Well, there's a couple of things. If there's the obvious, if someone's not going to Skype with you or have a telephonic conversation and they're constantly making up excuses, well, that's kind of a red flag, but that's an obvious one. If someone asks you for money, that's kind of a red flag too. You want to do a little bit of research on the person. If they have a social media presence that just kind of started and there's not much about them, there's not a lot of public record searches, that's kind of weird. If you ask them to send you a photo in real time and they can't do it time and time again, that's kind of a problem. And actually, there was a case, a good friend of mine, he knew I was writing this book, and he had a 16-year-old daughter who was communicating with a guy who they both thought seemed kind of fishy, and he wanted to meet. Well, we went through the checklist that I have in the book, and it turns out she asked him, to send a real-time photo. He couldn't do it. He left out a lot of details. Every time she'd ask a question about the area that he claimed he lived in, he was not forthcoming with details. Like, he didn't know specific restaurants, or it was shady, or he would try to change the subject. But one of the biggest giveaways was he did send her one photo. We did two things with that photo. We did an internet search on that photo, found that same photo on someone else's Facebook page, and it was very clear which Facebook page was the real one. He had taken it from someone else's, and we looked at the EXIF data, which is data about the camera that has taken the photograph that gives the exact geographic coordinates. And where he claimed to be was not where the photograph was taken.
Understood. Well, that makes a perfect segue, because I also want to move. You are a social media expert, and we give away just such large amounts of our personal data voluntarily on social media.
Yes, we do.
But tell me about the things that we don't know that we're doing and giving away.
Well, this is something that it's so important for companies to have a security awareness education program, and from the top all the way down, so that people really understand what they could be giving away. Because you may think, well, I'm just posting this one thing, but when you piece those things together, you can put together a lot of information about a person, and you can then target that person with perhaps a phishing, spear phishing email that person may want to click on. It may be something that they're really interested in, and you can really figure out a pattern of life on who that person is, and it's dangerous to companies, and it's dangerous to people, it's dangerous to families. So you have to be really cognizant about the things that you post. You have to look at your social media and your online presence as if someone who was a bad guy would, and see what exactly you're giving away about yourself and your family.
You mentioned,
or your company.
Yes. You mentioned spear phishing. I've heard the term phishing. What is spear phishing?
It's targeted toward a specific person.
Okay. And you send them an email, they click on it, then they take all of your data?
If you click on the link, yes. And a lot of them are they're very sophisticated, and they're very realistic looking. And again, I go back to a security education awareness program, because if you understand what the risks are, you are empowering yourself and your company, and you can make decisions based on that, whether or not you want to go forward with whatever application or whatever you're posting. And then you take the power back.
When you and I were talking earlier, before we came on here, tell me what you said about those of us who think we have privacy.
Well, I hate to say it, but in this day and age, we don't have privacy. So we have to learn the ways that we can protect ourselves. And it's gotten to the point where everything, you can't go and buy a brand new car now that doesn't have a computerized system in it. You have alarm systems or home comfort systems that have all kinds of information they're collecting about you. And you have socks. You have beds that tell you how you're sleeping, and they're sending that information to your phone. And anything that is connected has the potential to be broken into.
And that's only going to continue. When I was on the internet today looking at various things, I saw a particular photo that was, or a graphic that was talking about, in the future, the Internet of Things, that, yes, everything's going to be wired. I mean, most of the items in your home, if they have any level of complexity, or even if it's a pair of socks, but it becomes even more important that people grasp how their information can be jacked.
Yes. And one of the things, aside from education and incorporated into the education courses, you need to have things like reading the terms of service of what you're using, because you would be very surprised at what is being collected on you. And then you can make a decision. Well, is this something that I want, that is important enough to me for me to download or not? And then you want to look at the permission settings on your phone. Mm-hmm. And some operating systems are much worse than others, where if you download a particular application and you look and you see the permission settings of what that application has, there are very popular applications that have access to your microphone, your photos, your camera, your network, your pretty much everything that's on that phone, and you're just giving that away. Now, some people may not care. I mean, there's, you know, like...
I hate that argument because I've had friends say to me, man, I don't care. It's like, I've got nothing to hide. I'm like, dude, that is not the point. Whether you think you don't have something to hide is not the point. You have a right to privacy,
yes,
and you should give a damn about that.
Well, because it can potentially put you, your family, and your company at risk. Because if someone is collecting all of this information, just like with the case we discussed before, the Hillary case, he was able to answer those questions based on just pure internet research. And that's kind of scary.
Yes, it is. Well, let's talk about money some more. You mentioned ransomware. Explain what this is.
So, ransomware is modern day kidnapping, but a lot easier because you don't really have to actually kidnap the person and hole them up in some like Law and Order like shed or something like that. It's a piece of malware that what it does is you download it perhaps on your phone by clicking a link in social media that is targeted to you. You click it in an email. There's various other ways that you can click it. You go to a malicious website. And what happens is it goes through all of the files on your phone or on your computer with whatever that user's access is, and it makes those files encrypted or unreadable. And it will not stop there. It will, whatever that user has access to, it will jump to all the systems that are in that network, and it will make them unreadable. And again, education is key because there are things that you can do. There are actually two cases. There was a hospital in LA that was recently the victim of ransomware, and I don't know for sure, but my theory is because they paid the ransom, that they did not have backups. They were not testing backups. They didn't have an incident response policy in place. People's lives were in danger. There was another hospital in the Virginia, Maryland, D.C. area that also was hit with this too, and they were able to get themselves back up and running. But the problem with ransomware is oftentimes they'll leave kind of a little back door in there, or they'll leave more malware so they can get back into the system.
So even if you think you've removed it somehow or paid the ransom,
it may not be.
Yeah.
So you have to have a team come and actually look at it. So it's pretty serious. And when you pay it, they'll use an online currency that is hard to trace. Mm-hmm. So, or it's in a country where we have no jurisdiction, so you're not getting it back. And it's easy. It's very easy to do. You could just send out mass emails to an entire company and hope someone downloads it. And if you don't have your system set up where users can only access, what they need to know, and if you don't have your sensitive information kept somewhere else and you don't have it encrypted, well, you just gave them a free entrance into the system, and that's why education is so important.
My God.
It doesn't have to be scary, because if you educate yourself and you educate your company, you are empowering yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a Texas girl laying down the law right there. I like that. Let me ask you this. Yesterday, I wanted to do my prep for the show. I want to get out of the house into a more conducive environment to think. So I go to the Burbank Library. I sit down, I get my paper out, get my mobile device out, and of course, I'm wanting to look at your information. And I'm like, well, yeah, I want to use the Wi-Fi. So I pull up their Wi-Fi, and then, there's that long disclaimer that we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm just a total fool if I were to do this. So I didn't end up using the public Wi-Fi, but let's talk about free Wi-Fi.
So there's some issues. And again, educating your users and yourself against how you can protect yourself from becoming a victim is critical, because there are various ways that bad guys can look at what you're doing. So if you're not using a virtual private network, you and encrypting what you're sending, you have the potential for anyone else who is using that same wireless network to be sniffing your traffic and collecting it. Or if someone sets up a network that is, say you're staying in a hotel, and they set up a network that's called the same name as the hotel, and it's got a higher signal, you may connect to that. And you know what? They own you. They can do whatever they want on your device. They can put malware on there, and you're connecting into that network. So you want to be really careful about connecting to unsecured networks. Very, very careful.
Well, you talk about education and how important it is, and tell me about Inspired eLearning. What do you do with them?
So Inspired eLearning has multiple courses in all kinds of genres. We have a very strong security awareness program. We also have a compliance program. And the courses, we have multiple fundamentals courses so that different types of learners can take the courses, and because they may learn in a different way. And I will tell you, those courses are fun. They're really fun. There's also modules on specific things, like there's a malware module, there is an Internet of Things module, and then there's mini modules that are much, much shorter too, so you can get through them really quickly, but you actually really learn the information, and it's done in a way that's fun. I used to not really believe in online training because in my experience prior, I would just click next, next, next. It was the same thing every year. But this is fun. It's really, really fun.
Well, I can tell you are passionate about it. Let me ask you this.
Because it's the answer.
Well said. Do you still work with the Department of Defense?
I do not currently work for the Department of Defense, no.
Could they call you back?
Well, no, because, they could not call me back. But I still have to watch, the things that I say. And the reason that I left and joined a company like Inspired eLearning is not just because I believe so strongly in what we do, because we are helping so many people with our courses and educating the public in a way that's fun. There's something in it for them. They enjoy it. But because it's important to me to educate as many people as possible on what the risks are. And when you're in the intelligence community, you kind of got to keep your mouth shut, and you can't say anything. Everything that you say is you have to kind of run it through a chain. And I still abide by the rules because I'm a 16-year bureaucrat. But but it's important to me to get this information out because I want to help and I want to protect as many people as possible, because I've seen things in my career that just sicken me. I've seen absolutely sicken me in the personal and in the corporate sector.
Well,
people who've been victimized.
I saw this article this past week, and it was in Digital Trends, and they surveyed 2,000 some odd people across the U.S. And after terror attacks, the next thing that people were the most afraid of was cyber attacks and cybersecurity issues. So people, there is an awareness.
They should be, because the more we connect to the Internet of Things type of devices, you may put that smart TV in your conference room that's connected to your corporate network. Well, that's an entrance in. You may have Fitbit that's connected to, or I shouldn't say Fitbit, but a health monitoring monitoring system that is connected to your phone. Well, there's a lot of issues there where people can get in, and if they can get into the phone, because a lot of times companies now, you use your personal phone as your work phone, and you have personal applications and work applications, and some companies don't segregate those, and that's an entrance into the corporate network. And the more we move to these Internet of Things, such as things that run our infrastructure, the scarier it gets.
Bingo. In this same article, and this was in Digital Trends, and the poll was through Pew Research, but at the end, they mentioned this thing which, gosh, I don't remember, but it says, last Christmas, Russian hackers carried out the first ever successful attack on a nation's power grid into Ukraine, and they plunged 200,000 people into darkness. Now, you would think that surely our infrastructure would be more secure than that, but at the same time, our infrastructure would be far more complex because we've got all of these various competing companies delivering utilities. But yes, I mean, why drop a bomb if you can just turn everybody, turn everything
Absolutely.
off and just cause chaos?
All cars now have this internet component in them, transportation systems. So it can be scary, but you don't have to be scared. You have to learn about it. And I don't mean become like the cyber geek who catalog their Star Trek tapes by star date. I mean, just learn the basics.
Yeah.
Have an education system so you really understand what you're doing.
Well, especially with kids as well, because I just had a guest on a couple of days ago, and we were talking about the whole issue of technology with kids. So it is the responsibility of the adults within the family and to all of us to just be aware, look, this is what it is, ain't going away. You might as well step up and become knowledgeable about it.
Absolutely. You're creating your kid's identity. And a lot of kids now, their identities are being created before they're even born with pregnancy announcements. And if we have time, I'll tell you why I wrote my book.
Hit me.
So I did digital forensics for major crimes and intrusions cases for the DoD for a while. And I still kept in touch with all the agents I supported. And one of them called me, and he told me this case that gave me a heart attack. And it was, they caught a guy who was sending out suspected child porn photos, and they caught him for that. As the forensic analyst is going through the computer, he starts seeing all these chat sessions that this guy's having with a supposed 11-year-old girl. And he wants to meet her. And she believes him. He says he's a 13-year-old boy, he lives at the next town over, and, sure enough, he knows everything about her. He convinces her he met her. Well, the guy's like, how did he meet her? She really didn't have a social media presence. And turns out he goes to the guy's browser history and he sees he's going to the mother's social media pages on a daily basis, no privacy settings, and she's just freely saying everything, posting pictures. He knew everything. Fortunately, he got caught for something else and never met the girl, but those are the dangers that can happen. And this woman would have been horrified to know that she had potentially put her child at risk.
Well, Tyler, the work that you're doing is really good. We will have you back because this issue is extremely important and becoming more important.
Absolutely.
Every day. We are only going to get more and more connected. So thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
My fellow Texan.
My fellow Texan.
All right. and she didn't like it. She was a Texan. She told us how it was. I appreciate that.
I love that I'm a Texan.
Me too.
I'm proud of it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you watching. I love doing this show. I love having conversations like we just had. And my hope and my passion is to spread information to you. I hope you find it relevant. I hope you enjoy it. And if you like what we do, tell your friends and family, leave comments, keep it classy. But, help us out, man. Spread the word. And thank you. Until next week, I'm Michael Parker. This is Antidote. You, me, every single one of us, we are the antidote.